Hi, this is Mrs. Bustamante. Today we're going to talk about how do we reduce air pollutants, right? So can you explain how air pollutants can be reduced at the source? Sometimes it includes regulatory, conservation, and alternative fuels. And then what are some of those methods specifically that we can use? And particularly at coal plants, what do we use? And how do those scrubbers and things that we use at coal plants, what do they do to the chemicals to make it less toxic? So there are three general methods to reducing air pollutants. One is regulatory practices, right? How do we regulate what can come out of something? One is a conservation practice, right? Using less of something or using it only at specific times, right? Using it sparingly. And the other is an alternative fuel type process. We're mostly going to talk about regulatory processes here and kind of conservation, I guess, right? Because they're changing how things get released. The first one we're going to talk about is vapor recovery nozzles. These are actually what we use at the gas station when we go to pump our own gas. I don't think I've ever used anything differently. But basically what it does is it prevents fumes from escaping into the atmosphere when fueling a motor vehicle, right? So there's kind of like a shut off and a shut on until you have to turn it on in order to release those vapor molecules again into the air. So we're not just releasing them anytime we pull that nozzle off. Another really important thing is a catalytic converter. This started in about 1975, and it's a device that we use for internal combustion engines, most of our cars, right, that converts pollutants in the exhaust into less harmful molecules. So typically, what are we thinking of when we talk about harmful molecules that enter? We're talking about carbon dioxide, we're talking about our NOxes and our hydrocarbons. These are harmful exhaust gases that would enter this catalytic converter. And then there's kind of like a ceramic honeycomb device, I guess you could say. It's plated with different chemicals, and this causes a reaction of those harmful gases to cause them to change into less harmful gases that get released. So things like carbon dioxide and water get released out the other end. Nitrogen, even some straight oxygen, right? So the exhaust pipe then emits these gases into the air, but they're less harmful than what entered it. I'm going to post this video. It's a great video for you to watch and get some more detail about how catalytic converters work on the inside. So please watch that at the link. So another thing you need to know about are scrubbers. And what do scrubbers do? They kind of do exactly what they sound like they do. They scrub things away, or they remove particles and gases. Typically, they're used in industrial exhaust streams, maybe factories, someplace where you're having, or coal burning plants, someplace where you're having a lot of exhaust, or typically burning, giving off chemicals in some way or another. There are a couple different types. The first one we're going to talk about is a wet scrubber. And it's where we introduce the dirty gas stream with a scrubbing liquid. So why do we call it a wet scrubber? Because we use liquid. Typically, this liquid is water. And it works best on particulate or gases that can be collected, or a combination of those two together. And you can collect them in the scrubbing liquid. It's sort of like cleans off those gases a little bit, right? And makes it cleaner when it leaves, or it has a mist eliminator that then kind of makes it so that stuff leaving is less harmful. And typically this is used when you're trying to collect both particulates and gas in a single system. Maybe you have both that are given off. So then there are dry scrubbers. These are where dry reagents are sprayed into an exhaust stream, and then the pollutants get neutralized or reacted in some way to turn them into a different substance. Then that substance falls out of the gas, right? Because it's heavier, we reacted it, and it gets caught in a particle screen, and that particle screen kind of keeps it from escaping, and then we can dispose of those particles separately in another cleaner method. Coal burning plants, typically the ones we think of using scrubbers, and sometimes they use something called an electrostatic precipitator. And basically what it does is dirt particles gain a charge. So we give them a charge to these particles that are given off from one wire plate. And before being attracted to a second wire plate that has a positive charge, they kind of get stuck in this system, right? And then we can collect them and dispose of them more appropriately so they're not just exiting in the air. So basically we're giving things charge and then we're capturing them in that charge. The last one we're going to talk about is desulfurization. It's where we reduce sulfur dioxide emissions. Typically, this happens near a coal burning plant. So we burn that coal near something called calcium carbonate. If you did the chalk lab with me in chemistry, we talk about chalk being calcium carbonate. So we burn it near this compound called calcium carbonate, and instead some of it will react instead of just getting given off into the atmosphere, and that will produce calcium sulfate, which is a far less harmful product than just releasing sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere and having it exposed to the environment.